Hey guys, what's going on? We're talking about some building specific things here in Utah. I found this really cool website recently. Shout out to these guys. It's called Building Salt Lake. It sounds like they're kind of an independent media company that talks about development that's happening here in Utah, specifically in the downtown area. So I've got two articles here that they just released recently that I thought was really important information that I wanted to share with you guys. I think this is really, if you're interested in this type of thing, you're thinking about moving here or you already live here and you want some of this information, I think there's some really cool topics that they cover here on this website. So the first article is going to say the West Side affordable housing project falls through. So if you know anything about Salt Lake City, you'll know that the East Side is typically the nicer part of town and the West Side is the less nice part of town, right? So this is a housing project that was supposed to provide affordable housing here on the West Side. This was actually going to be on, I think it's 18th West and North Temple. And it says that the Housing Authority of Salt Lake announced at its meeting on Monday that the 350 unit apartment home project at that address had already received approval has fallen through. The group pointed to rising construction costs and the rapid spike in the price of borrowing as primary reasons for returning a bond to the state. It is the latest project to highlight how difficult it is to create affordable housing, and it's a good reminder that while a project can win approval from the city, no project is guaranteed to be built during a massive change in the market. This is something that I've talked about here on the channel before. I said, hey, in order to build these affordable housing, you have to have the city on board, you have to have the state on board and the county, to really help with the construction of these projects. And that comes in the form of tax credits or potential money, right? Which some people agree with or don't agree with. But it also comes in the form of, approving zoning and approving building permits for these types of projects. Oftentimes the requirements that they have for these projects are so restrictive that builders and developers, they look at it and say, I can't really make money on this, right? We're going to have rent control units where you can only rent to certain people at a certain amount. And, to really offset the costs that we have for building, it just doesn't make sense, right? At the end of the day, these builders and developers are in it to make a little bit of money. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, people will argue with that all day long. But at the end of the day, they're there to make some money. That's why they're doing this. They're not working for free. They're not just doing this as a charity case. So there has to be some incentive from the city, the county, and the state to help push this through, in my opinion. So even though the city in this circumstance did say, hey, yeah, we'll make this happen, we're going to give you this tax credit, unfortunately, they weren't able to make it work due to rising construction costs and the cost of borrowing money at today's higher interest rates. It says right here, the apartments at 1881 West North Temple failed despite $46 million in public money behind the project, including the tax credits. A rise in construction costs and interest rates led to a $10 million gap in financing for the project. Jumping down here, the project was coming together using low-income housing tax credits worth $40 million, as well as funding from the city's redevelopment agency and a pool of state funding. So they're saying basically they had $40 million in tax credits and there was additional funding from the city and the state to help push this project through, but unfortunately it still fell through. So this just goes to show how difficult it is to create affordable housing in today's market. Even with 40, potentially up to $50 million of tax credits and state funding, they still weren't able to get this, this project to really pencil out and actually make sense for the builders, for the developers, the renters, the city, everybody that's involved. The new homes would have been mixed income with 1/3 of the units held at affordable rents. At rents affordable for those making 60% of the area median income. That's actually pretty low. 60% is very low. So that's a very small number. I don't know. Maybe they could have pushed that up to say, hey, we can charge rents up to 70%, or we can rent to people who are making X amount of dollars, or, some type of arrangement there to make it more beneficial for everybody involved. But, unfortunately at this point, it sounds like this is maybe kind of off the table. So unfortunately, we're losing this housing project here that was supposed to bring over 350 much needed apartments to the downtown area. Let's jump over here to this other article. So let's go ahead and jump over to this other article. This one talks about the development happening in South Salt Lake. It's not just drive-throughs. South Salt Lake is also getting some housing in its new downtown. So South Salt Lake is, obviously just to the south of Salt Lake City. It is its own city there, and it does have, some of its own rules and regulations about what can be built and the zoning, and, it kind of stands separately from Salt Lake City. They basically say, hey, we have a downtown section of South Salt Lake, which is different than downtown Salt Lake City, right? So that's why they've got this in quotes right here. If you haven't heard about our newsletter, you can go down to the description box below. We are going to be doing a giveaway at the end of September for anybody who signs up between now and then. You're going to get a free Ring doorbell or Nest thermostat of your choosing. If you know, for this giveaway, we're going to be basically doing a drawing for anybody who signs up, and we'll ship that out to you at the end of September after that drawing. So make sure to go sign up for the newsletter. We're going to be sending out emails probably about every other week. So you're only going to get maybe 2 emails a month. At the most, it's going to be 1 email a week. We'll see where it goes, but this is something new that I'm starting up just to kind of keep people informed on what's going on. So if you're not always on YouTube, this could be another source for you to get information about the Salt Lake City market and just stay up to date. All right, so coming down here, South Salt Lake is seeing the creation of 3 significant housing projects near the center of the area it calls downtown. There's 3 mid-rise residential projects that will bring life, energy, and space for 603 new homes in the area. This is a huge amount of housing units. And the thing about South Salt Lake is traditionally, or at least in years past, you know, it's kind of been an older part of town. It's mostly single family homes. You know, there's some industrial and there's some, you know, lots of parking lots and manufacturing and car lots and mechanics shops and whatnot. So it was kind of this like rundown area, but they're trying to revitalize this. And I think that's primarily because the east side of Salt Lake has gotten so expensive. The west side is already going through these types of updates. And now South Salt Lake is going through those updates as well because of its proximity to Salt Lake City. I mean, if you live in South Salt Lake, you can be downtown Salt Lake in about 10 minutes. So it's really close, and there's going to be a lot of demand for housing along this corridor, especially because the north-south corridor here in Salt Lake is the main, artery for traffic, right? So if you're in South Salt Lake, you're going north, there's lots of public transport options. The roads are established and mature. You know, it's pretty easy to get around if you're going north and south. That's what makes South Salt Lake so attractive overall. The city so far had largely attracted businesses that are suburban in nature. Just 4 businesses take up 11.3 acres of land near 2100 South State. Most of it is surface parking. The city also recently entered into an agreement to try and open a Porsche dealership on 5 or more acres of land in the area immediately adjacent to a transit stop. So let's come down here and take a look at what we've got going on. So you've got Utopia apartments here. This is kind of cool. They've got this slider here. So this is the first project here, 9 parcels totaling 1.58 acres, fronting West Temple and Utopia Avenue, which is 2175 South, and will become home to a mixed-use building with 187 new homes. So this is what it looks like right now, and that's kind of a diagram of what it's going to look like when it's finished. The building, named Utopia for its primary street, has received conditional approval from South Salt Lake and is being prepared for construction at the moment. The billboard, you've got this other building going in here, and this one's pretty unique because there's a lot of discussion about what, billboards and how many there are in Utah, and just, there's a lot of controversy around them. So that's interesting that they named it that. Nothing says Utah quite like an apartment building named the billboard. In South Salt Lake, developers will build an 85-foot tall building with 180 new apartments on 9 lots consolidated into 1.69 acre parcel. This is interesting. They're going so tall with it. 85 feet tall is pretty high for what we normally see in Salt Lake. Of course, downtown, you've got your high-rise stuff that's going to be 100, 200, 300 feet. But once you get outside of that, it's very rare to see anything more than 3 or 4 stories just because of height restrictions on building and developers and what they're able to actually put out there. So this one being 85 feet tall, it looks like here on the picture they've got it set up for like maybe 2 or 3 levels of what looks like parking, probably parking garage or some mixed use retail, and then 5 floors of units above that. So it's gonna be a really tall building actually. And it'll be interesting to see that's kind of sticking up out of the sky. It's going to be something that I think personally, sure, it's maybe not the most attractive thing to look at, but it is a good use of space to build up, because obviously the ground stuff is all disappearing really quickly. So there's pros and cons to that. The billboard is going to include 6,800 square feet of ground floor commercial. So that's actually pretty small. 6,800 square feet is really like, 2, maybe 3 restaurants, of your average restaurant size. So it's not that much compared to the size of the building that this is going to be. Lastly, we've got 55 West Utopia. Builders have been busy completing a 3rd building at 55 West Utopia that will bring another 236 units to the area. It's described as a parking and multifamily building. That's a fitting description, as the building includes 4 levels with hundreds of parking stalls below 4 levels of apartments. There's 4 levels of apartments, 236 units in all, and they'll be stacked on top of 4 huge levels of parking. So they're not only using it just as an apartment building, but they also are going to provide public parking there at that building. So this is kind of just a quick video on what's happening here in Salt Lake, what's happening with housing projects. I wanted to make a video that's a little bit different than we usually make here on the channel. If you enjoyed this, drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. I want to be your trusted real estate resource when it comes to buying or selling real estate here in Utah. If you're thinking about making that move here in from out of state, or you already live here and you're looking at purchasing or selling a property, reach out to me. My information is here on the screen. I love hearing from you guys. I've had hundreds of people from all across the world and right here locally reach out, and I absolutely love it. With that said, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.